The vision within. I want to thank you all for joining me on this edition of Guidance for the Soul Live. And believe it or not, I have no idea what this is called, right? No, this is what I do. I sit down and I said, what is it that we're going to talk about? I had no guidance allowing me to come forth with anyone other than the soul of Louis Farrakhan. That's what I got told as I was getting ready, just a few minutes before coming on. And my soul was saying, are you ready to handle that kind of light vision? You see, others are saying that people are honoring of who we are here as much as we are who we think we are here. And that's what happens when you cross over, is you start to see the differences between those who are in alignment with you here and on the soul level. So while I may disagree with you, I can actually honor you. That's where he's at. He would be fighting for justice, and this woman knows what that means. But from his point of view now, in perspective, is what he's saying. Her perspective is her strength, which is her strength to say, I will fight for the underdogs. But what happens when the underdogs are what? Caretaking of their own hearts only? It's still part of the vision of the love of all souls. And for all of us here on this realm, we have many realms. What we're saying is that his vision is this is an honoring of her and her disagreement with how he would have been in his mind, perhaps. He's of Muslim origin, correct? And he's saying she's fighting for the justice for everybody, even when those visions go against who she is as her. It could be as a female embodiment as well, because many are starting to see the disillusionment of their faiths when in fact it is a disregarding of faiths that Brenda was doing. It's more like having access to soul vision means that any system is beautiful for your soul. But if I'm here saying that I love who I am and I'm not aligning with your system, does that make me bad? And some people are saying, yeah, it does, from certain visions, okay? So this is why his vision is in honor of all as well. And he's saying it on a very clear channel. I want to be a part of that vision that says that channeling is harder than what many think, because you have to hold yourself very high in order to get to that place of I'm not dishonoring of their hearts or their wisdom. Because the wisdom within is where Brenda often gets told she's to align with. And that's our own internal vision of what love is. And that's what I do for the most part. Most often I'm listening to those souls from various realms of love. Laughter is what I was getting from some souls who were caretaking the vision of who they were here versus the other realms of love that I vibrate in. So this is an instructional vision as well for those of you who are interested in what he might have said to me about myself. I was of faith in myself and my family. I don't honor those visions as much as what people might think. Sometimes I've had my own lessons handed to me going through the process of soul vision than what most would care to realize. That's the honesty of it. That's the honesty of I'm here to break the back of many, right? I was holding up so many people in my mind for their own visions that I was losing touch with my own vision of who I am here, which is about bringing justice to those who are of deserving it, right? No, it's those who actually do in fact say, I am deserving of justice. Those are all of us. If we aligned with the highest nature of who we are, do you think I would be bringing through opinionated souls? He's of opinions in his mind as well. All souls have those visions of who they are and where they are. And as I look into the camera, I can see what that vision is. I myself, as Brenda's soul vision that she's starting to wind into, is creating that vision of division sometimes with certain souls, because in essence, she can't be everything to everybody. I can't be on my heart and on my mind at the same time, correct? It's very difficult when you go to the nature of political agendas or ideologies, which is where most are, in one way, shape, or form. That's why a lot of people do the disconnect, but his soul is very strong in that vision of she's picturing me as a devil worshiper, right? No, this is what some people were calling her from another level of love of who they are, because that's their system. And they're saying anytime you hear something negative, it's from that versus the reality, which is another aspect of who we are, or someone that's close to our heart. You see, I've had souls in that vision of what that is. How many people are worried about the negative labels that they get placed on them? This is why Brenda is fighting for justice for all of those souls who come through and say, I was a victim of identity politics. And that's where he was. He's like, I'm of identity politics. I know how to handle my heart on various levels of love. I was the fighter, and I was extreme in my views. And he's saying that very carefully. I would have been considered extreme, but I never did doubt her heart. He's most likely a vision of hatred by many on this plane. And yet, when people say to themselves, I must be part of that vision, it means that you align with them in the ideas of freedom for souls who were enslaved in the minds and in the bodies. Okay, and many are saying we are not in that state of oppression anymore, and yet what he sees is very much of concern for his soul as much as it is for hers. We are not aligning with the vision of justice for only certain souls. This is the nature of the justice system, correct? That's a different kind of vision. We're talking about those who are seeing more and more of those, quote, caretakers trying to help people cross themselves over. You see, in his vision, he was never of that idea of I'm going to hurt somebody physically, correct? I've had my moments of it. Brenda herself is very honoring of that vision, because she knows what it is when people get aligned with celebrities or those of soul vision who are saying, I'm aligning her with it's like the Negro masters is what was being called out at one point in time to the vision of who she was. She herself is descended from those visions of black. They were utilizing a different word at the time in the census as well. So when you come to me, you might want to think twice about the idea of who I'm descended from. Okay? I've had it on both sides of my families, those of masters as well. And we call it the slave masters. Okay? But when we talk of Louis Farrakhan and his beauty, he says she knows what she's talking about. The color of my skin doesn't portray me as anything other as what? An oppressor of all souls, right? Those souls who want to come through and fight their way through the vision of whatever it is that their hearts are telling them. Or is it the mind? And this is the specialty, but it's the beauty of who he was. It was the wisdom that he offers, which is caretaking her heart. Don't align with those who are wanting to hurt people. In the minds, Brenda has opened up her heart to many souls who say to themselves, I'm not hurting you, am I? Do you want to know what it's like to hear the vision from various levels of love? I don't get very much anymore from people that I don't know, very little. What I do get are those handsome devils, right? Those souls that claim they're of that, right? No, but if you are in that vision of certain systems, you are vibrating in that vision, right? If you think about it and you align with it, that's your idea of who I'm going to try and avoid rather than who I'm going to, what? Adore as some aspect of who I am. That vibration is gone. It's part of the fairy tale of soul for the most part, unless you try to create from that vision of it. But that's on its way out. And he is of that. He knows that vision. That's that vision of I'm going to raise my finger and aim high. But there are those who are more in that idea of, oh, okay, now I understand. She's taking on the characteristics of who he is, correct? As a channel, that would be one thing. As a guide, it would be something completely different. You see, his vision never did disrupt it's like the service values that she is offering. So she's honoring of all of those souls who are caretaking of their hearts. All of those souls who are vibrating in the beauty of who they are and who they were here. There's a difference between those who have risen before and those who are on the rise in this world as I am of justice or I am of wisdom. Many of us can come through and say all is well on the soul level, and that is where she normally was. She's had her hat handed to her by, it's like the fairy tale vision is what most people don't like. But if you go to the honesty of what is, was, or will be, then you understand it's not a demeaning. It's like any other system of love that ever was brought to this plane, right? It's had its masters handed to them. Many will say, I was of this plane, versus I am now embodied by my own soul's vision of love, and therefore I have the love of all. If you feel that your system embodies the vision of the love of all without negating who they are here, you've hit a wonderful system. This is what I'm aiming for with most. It's not about trying to convince anybody that who you are is anything other than who you need to be. What it is understanding that more and more souls are coming into this vision, and you spiral yourself up into this place of beauty and love, and it's like cherishing and adoring yourself and your family and everyone. And then you feel good and you feel good and you feel good. And then someone comes along and they say something negative or something demeaning about who you are. And you can often feel the vibration sink in the vision of my energy. And that is because those souls are still trying their best to hold themselves up to the level of love that Brenda can aim for. Some of them want to be, it's like cherished and adored for who they were. She is saying they have their moments here to show us something about who we are or who we are aspiring to. Many are in the vision of I'm aspiring to be who I am. That's where you go. Most of us understand that. And yet most of us are saying, I don't like aspects of this vision or my own. And that's where we can then vibrate out of the nature of I was of racial bias and I had to vibrate out of it. Let's talk about that vision for a second. I grew up in a household where some of those words of negativity were labeled towards people, even though my own heart and mind wasn't into it. But it hurt me to hear it. And then I have to vibrate out of the vision of what? Love for those people that did that vision for me, to show me what? More about where they were and why they were there. This is why when I go to the vision of guidance or soul wisdom, it's to show us more about who we are. But most people are thinking, I'm better than already. I don't need any help. And that's where certain people go and they do those vision of I'm of the light and you're of the dark. And then that duality of soul starts to come through, and Brenda says, yeah, I've got your number on that one. It's a subjective vision. It's an alignment issue for most of us. Who do we align with and why? So where does your vision take you? Are you in that aspect of forgiveness, perhaps? Or are you thinking to yourself, we're fighting for our lives, is where many are on this plane, and that's when his soul would know how to handle her. We have to do the fight for our lives because that's the nature of it, correct? He was in that mindset of fighting for it. And fighting for it isn't to be belittled or judged, but yet it is on the spiritual enlightenment path in many ways. It can be judged, or it's just loved and accepted for what souls need to do. But for this soul here, as I am Brenda's soul and her savior, right? Her soul doesn't save her from the conditioning of the world. She owns it and she unwinds a lot of it on her own. I feel my way through this world. And if you feel like you have the answers for you and everyone else, by all means, continue to bring them through. What I'm saying is that those of us who align with the vision of social justice, which many of us are, on that idea of social justice, I own that vision of what that is on a higher level of life, is where Brenda goes. I know what that is. On a soul level, her own soul can tell her when to back away from soul vision and go into the vision of I am all that and more. I know what I know because I've done so much inner journeying and inner work that I can handle the tough stuff that other people don't want me to necessarily handle because it might make us a little uncomfortable. I was fearful of his soul at one point. His soul was wanting to come through a long time ago. And in fact, it did come through, and I was more afraid of the judgment from that soul's vision. Or was it more about the vision from those on the other side of the screen? That's the nature of where I go. Because of the nature of what I see, I still will admit that every so often I have a bit of fear in me about those who are placing those visions of I'm of anger for those who are not in alignment with who I am in my mind. And that's the beauty. You want to have a soul session, you will get your love and adoration handed to you. But if we're on the vision of societal impact or social impulse, that's my specialty, and I know how to do it from a place of where we're headed and how we're going to get there. Many are planting the seeds of total destruction of this plane, and we're not there. And we're not going to be there. I'm a generational soul vision. I can handle generations of information. I can go back and I can go forward. That's the strength of who I am because I know who I'm connecting with. And I say, hallelujah, right? There are so many souls who are of faith in this vision. And I want to say, I understand why you might be more concerned about my own safety. I've had to deal with rape victims on the other side of the veil. I've had to deal with those who've done those visions on the other side of the veil. I've had to deal with murderers, convicted felons. I even have some of those in my line, believe it or not, convicted felons. I'm of love of all, and my soul is the one that can bring me through that vision. It doesn't mean I align with everyone as like my friend. So let's get back to business, social justice warriors, right? What is that vision that scares people in the vision of I am of love of all, I need no warrior vision? And that's where Brenda is. She says, I am a warrior, but it's of the soft-hearted soul. I know how to do the work that loves people when they're going through their processes of alignment in their own vision of love. Because those souls who are doing that work are often some of the highest, it's like the highest paid actors are coming through, right? She hears from them, and there's a reason, because she knows how to handle the vision of what they're doing. They're saying, go for it, and don't let Joanna or another vision come through as less than. They're not less than. Every soul has its own vision of what it must go through when it passes or crosses over to the other side of the veil. Others are looking at it as a destination versus a journey. And that's why this journey here on this plane matters for us, because what we do here affects our expression on the other side. I'm not here to pussyfoot around those who are caretaking someone else's vision as better than them, right? Because what that would say is you are less than, and that's not what you are. You are no less than anyone else that's ever walked this plane. I love you. I'm setting you free. That's where people need to go, because in essence, people are not feeling the inner strength, beauty, and wisdom that they are inherently able to grab. You have to go in and see what it is that is holding me back from being the best that I can be, right? You are the best that you can be no matter what. What you're not doing is necessarily aligning with the society or the family or whatever around you that is highlighting the beauty of who you are. And that's where most people are. They're looking for the validation from their family, their friends, or the societies in which they've placed themselves to somehow lift them out of that vision of there's something wrong with who I am, correct? Think carefully about where we are on this plane. We are in the vision of laws of justice. And so many are saying those laws don't serve us. Well, then we have to go in and change that, or we have to adjust the system in some way, shape, or form. Brenda knows that vision very well. That soul of Louis Farrakhan, he's like, she's going to warrior herself out of the vision of love in his mind. It would have been a mindset versus the soul, which knows she's very much caretaken by her own soul, that can say, what is the vision of love that she holds? I'm not here to do damage to someone else's mindset. What I do is bring through wisdom from various levels of love. And the love of life is one in which many are trying to find that vision. And if you think that your idea of hurting somebody is somehow a joyful pleasure for you, you're going to sit there and be handed your hat by this one on a soul level as well. She doesn't mess around with those souls who are here trying to hurt her or her family. Let's put it that way. I can look out into the vision and I see what people are doing. I honor them in the fact that they're showing me more of what's happening, not only here, but on a soul level, and what we need to rise out of from this person's vision. But I can honor it as progress towards that vision of eternal love that many are looking for, correct? How many are saying, my love was being demeaned because I was aiming for an afterlife vision versus the reality of what I'm creating here? And what I was creating here, as Brenda and Louis would say, I am of love of his soul for doing what he did to show us more paths of discovery for those souls who are claiming I am a victim of oppression on this plane in this moment, and I deserve a chance to speak. I deserve a chance to wisely say this is my life and I create from it from a place of strength, honor, dignity of my own soul's expression, my own soul's fate. That's the strength in which many are coming through. And Brenda can see that, honor it, and say, I understand. The anger, the hatred that many are putting out is very illuminating for many of us. We see ourselves in those visions, do we not? Am I aligning with those who hate me? Brenda does. On a soul level, right? No, they would have been of hatred in essence of who she is here in the now. Because I was of that vision. I didn't agree. I wanted people to be hurt, right? Death penalties, not so much. I honored it at one point. I definitely was honoring of that vision. Now, not so much. her soul knows the vision of death by squad. That's where others are going in their minds for the social justice vision. They're thinking they're going to be calling themselves the death squads, and she's aiming her arrows at people that think that they can somehow get free and clear of that vision of what's coming. That's why his soul's coming through saying these are the souls that are trying to, quote, perform miracles. And she's saying, you better believe it. I know what it is to be called various words at this point, right? How many people don't know doodly squat about their genealogy, and most likely she would branch you out enough to find that you were most likely also related in some way, shape, or form to some vision of love that you would deem less than in this field of caretaking of their hearts. Most souls are very well influenced by Louis Farrakhan in that vision of justice, or he's like saying hatred of those who weren't performing that vision. She's of justice from a soul level, and he wants that for her. I don't have to hear the anger and hatred from my family or my friends anymore. I hear wisdom, but I don't hear very much, because in essence, I've excluded visions of love from my heart. See, that's why he's coming through saying she's disconnecting from those of the faiths, because in essence, she knows that the wisdom of those faiths is being held or taken to task for those who didn't align with the vision of the love of all. Because if you're encouraging violence within or on another, that vision is starting to work its way out. That's the vibration of the Christ soul that's coming through. And that's when people start to understand this is a change that's going to be happening in this century, but it's 2 centuries worth of information she has access to. Now, his soul's laughing. He says, oh, she can bring it like anybody else. Because in essence, his soul is very condemning of the wise ones. Don't discourage those of social justice. And she says, there's no discouraging. I honor all of those who are for social justice because I aim high. And I know that when others are saying I am being held in the vision of oppression by society in ways in which most don't even understand it, she sees it. Not only within herself, but from the place of I honor those souls for doing what they've done. To get us to this point of looking at who we are and asking ourselves the questions that need to be asked. How many people want Louis Farrakhan as a guide? How many would say that, right? How many would understand that it depends on what level of life you are in, right? He was of life. He's of love. And even that vision would say, I am at that moment. Because it's not about aligning with anyone's faith. It's the idea of what those faiths have done to the vision that soul actually had, which is we align with who we are. We align with our own highest vision of who we are as souls. We go in, we lift ourselves up, we hear our beauty, we start to receive our wisdom. We start to understand it. We start to move in different ways. We start to express in the beauty of who we are. And if we are is more than who we are here, that's when Brenda starts to get a little high and mighty in her mind sometimes, right? It's not. Oh, I can. He says she knows how to take down the souls that would own up to their vision of depression and suicide. I had to deal with that not only from family and friends, but on a soul level that was horrific, and I will not do that vision for people. I'm not here to try and tell you that that's the way to go. I would never say that, because in essence, in my own soul, there's always hope. Always. I don't give up on myself nor on others. What I do is I will gently let people go if they are in the vision of I'm going to cause too much havoc for my soul. But if I can deal with the Marx Brothers, ooh, that's a different vision of comedic talent, right? There are Marx visions that, and the comedian, they want her to be lighthearted again because she was so depressed, right? I was in a slump, and I even fell ill with a cold that my soul vibrated me out of very fast for the most part. This is when I will go to that vision of telling people about the physical visions of what it is to embody your own soul's vision of high. And that vision is he wants to pass the buck to say, enjoy the vision of what those souls do for us. I went to comedic talent to lift myself up, but you can't rely on that necessarily as a crutch for who you are. This is about what we're creating in our vision, but it is about enjoying our lives. This is that message that Brenda passed on today about enjoying our lives. If you are feeling like you're in a slump or suicidal, I want you to reach out for help. If you are feeling like you are depressed, that's a whole different mindset to be creating from. Okay, we can spiral ourselves into those visions. We can also spiral ourselves out of them. Okay, it's a spiraling effect. I love who I am, right? Set me free, souls that don't love who I am. That's what Brenda was hearing. Is like she was hearing some of those, oh, I don't like this. That she's like, well, don't follow me then. No, but it's seriously just one of those beautiful visions. So if you are in alignment with who you are, great. Stay beautiful for who you are. Don't worry about it. There's no fear on the other side of the veil. It's a process of opening up to who we are, whether or not we care to know it or not at this moment. We're all connecting in various ways. So with that, I want to say, stay curious, wise, and soulful. Have an amazing day.